Welcome to Pet Sitter Confessional, an open and honest discussion about life as a pet sitter. Today, we're brought to you by our friends at Time to Pet and Pet Sitters International. Technology continues to influence the pet care industry and the world at large. And as business owners, how do we know what are good decisions to make? How can it be helpful? How can it hurt our business? And really, what's the future of this interaction in our business? And how can it better serve our clients? And today, I'm really excited to be speaking with the Pixelum team about their product, about the system, and about the future of technology in the industry. Guys, it's a real big pleasure to have you on. Please tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Collin. Thanks so much for having us. I got Ian. We have Ian, our Chief Innovation Officer, and Joe, our CEO. Ian's also a co-founder with Joe. And why Pixelum? Collin, first and foremost, we love animals. We love working with people who dedicate their careers to helping animals, helping pets and pet owners. Our team at Pixelum also has a ton of entrepreneurial experience starting companies and growing them. Not only that, they have the Fortune 500 background as well. But we have a highly skilled team of developers who aren't typically accessible to this industry as well. And also with Ian and a few of our other operators consulting experience, we really dig into the challenges companies in this industry are facing that will make the biggest impact to approach first. Those are just a few things that come to mind. And I'd like to pass off to Ian.
Sure. Thanks. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer, as Austin mentioned, and I'm very passionate about this space because I've been learning about the complexities of it. We got the good fortune of going to Dogco this past year, which was really enlightening for us. And this all kind of started off almost by accident with one of my family members' husbands who owns a pet service company. And over the years, we talked about it, and I had no clue, just how complex it really was. And as someone who likes to build innovative technology, it's a good challenge to find complex industries. It makes the job more enjoyable. I can't count how many times I've worked at a Fortune 500 company doing like an e-commerce system or order management system or some sort of, business operational platform. And, the challenges just in this space are so unique because they combine so many different aspects to, humans, to the pets, to the owners themselves. There's just a lot involved. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm Joe. I'm the CEO. And, just to echo what Austin and Ian have been saying, I've really enjoyed getting to work with some of our clients and also meet so many great people in this industry and solve their problems. I think this industry has a ton of really, really unique, really incredible challenges. We're problem solvers over here at Pixelum. And, just the scheduling and the logistics and the operational complexity of a pet service business is, it's exceeded what I expected, when we got started in this industry. Also met a ton of incredible people. I really look forward to working with our pet service clients every day, and, I'm happy to be solving the challenges we are for them now, and hopefully solve, more and different challenges in the future.
Oh, I'm warmed to hear that we have a complex and hard to solve industry because it makes all of our frustrations feel validated. I know that's for sure. But to hear that that focus of human pets and owners, and you've kind of talked about this little why this is important to you. But technically speaking, what does Pixelum actually do, and how is this going about solving these problems?
So our lead solution here is CallioPro, which is an automated scheduling and routing system. I actually think there are a lot of parallels to the warehouse industry that, give a good analogy for how it works, right? When you have a blank slate, whether that's, a brand new pet service business or a small pet service business, it's similar to a empty warehouse, right? Easy to find places to put things, easy to Um, like identify, hey, this should probably go here, right? As that warehouse gets more full, as your business hopefully grows and you take on more clients, it becomes harder and harder to even see where the gaps are and where things could even go, right? I've spoken to so many pet service owners. We started building a chatbot for Pup Scouts, Ian's cousin's company, and through that process, they're like, okay, what do you want this to do? They're just like, take away all the questions that don't have to relate to scheduling and routing. They're like, okay, tell us a little bit more about that. And we realized that was, kind of the hardest problem that they had to solve. Um, so yeah, our current solution is it's designed to identify those gaps to ensure that the right provider is matched to the right service and they will be able to fulfill it at the right time. We and really having a system that like a software system that can view and analyze the entire layout of the business of your schedules of your capacity. It's really the only way that you can truly optimize and solve that problem, in my opinion. So that's our core solution right now is Calio Pro. And we've also started exploring some different solutions as well. We've built some rewards programs, some different scheduling and process management tools. And we're doing all of this on top of the existing industry software, such as Time to Pet, Precise Pet Care, etc. But really, we're open and we would love to solve a variety of challenges, as I mentioned. So we're a custom software operation. We're not just selling Calio Pro. We're just solving one specific challenge. So we can really do a wide variety of things.
Now, what I'm curious about is this a problem that could only have been solved now, as in this in the last year, or given some of the latest technologies and things like that, or is this just not enough effort you think has been placed behind solving these issues?
I mean, that's an interesting question because technologically, I mean, AI is running rampant now, right? And that's kind of what everyone's talking about. Yet, in our instance here at Calio Pro, we're not really utilizing AI as heavily as some might think. It is a component of it. And so it does help. Especially the agentic side, given that, a lot of the software that's out there doesn't have, support for direct connections with the data side of the system. So in some ways, yes, but the ability to handle all the variables and business rules really could have been done for quite a while. I think one of the challenges we're seeing as to why it hasn't probably been solved before probably mostly revolves around it's just an intricate issue. And given that we're a little bit more of an innovation leaning company, that's right up our alley where we're like, well, that's really a wild problem. Can we solve it? It's almost like give us your hardest challenge and we'll see if there's a way we can, build a solution to it. And I don't know if it's just been that there's a lot of folks who are like, well, that's hard. I don't know. Versus, for us, it was when we heard about it, we're like, this is a hard challenge. Why don't we just explore it first? And we had a little leeway because, it's my cousin's husband's company that we started, trying to figure this out with. And, we weren't really under pressure to deliver something. We said, well, let's take a look and see what we can do. And that really resulted in like us spending 3-4 weeks just kind of wrapping our heads around it, diagramming, what could this look like? A lot of discussions with myself, Joe, and our other engineers on just what were the possibilities. And then we eventually came to the conclusion, yes, I think this actually is something we could solve. And built a model and started to test it. And here we are.
has the increase in compute and compute power helped with at least the speed at which you're able to run these computations to solve these more in like real time instead of needing to wait, so it doesn't break the workflow of people?
So we're not using a super powerful engine to run it, if that makes sense. It's pretty standard tech in many regards, and Joe can speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, it's, really the thing that we identified is, that there are only so many permutations of a schedule that can exist, right? And if you calculate all those possibilities, when you factor in all the various constraints that a pet service company deals with on a daily basis, like first of all, like who's available at a given time? Are they, able to work with this animal, because do they have an allergy? Do they have, have they worked with that client in the past? That's the other thing. We've seen so many different business models, and we want to support all of them. We don't want you to have to change your process in order to use CallioPro. And so really, if let's say you have a staff of 10 walkers and 100 appointments, the theoretical number of combinations is in the hundreds of thousands, right? But really the ones that make sense, based on time, geography, availability, and all that, you're probably left with, probably 5 or 10 realistic optimized schedules, right? So really the work and the effort that we put in is to set up our algorithms and our systems to mirror and identify all these possible combinations and permutations. And then we're really only comparing, like I said, maybe 5 to 10 routes a day. This isn't, we don't go out and figure out like the calculus level 100,000 combinations of routes. We focus on the ones that actually make sense for how you do business and what your goals are. Are you trying to stack as many appointments on as few providers as possible to have other people that can float? Are you trying to balance evenly? Do you care more about geography versus just fitting in as many services as possible? These are the constraints and the algorithm optimizations that we do with all of our clients.
Well, I'm disappointed to hear about the calculus, because that was my next question. We were going to turn to break out the blank pieces of paper and just solve this real quick. No, you've kind of walked through a few different of the constraints on that. You guys also talked to just a lot of pet businesses and service industry. What are some of the more common bottlenecks that you see in our industry?
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because what has been really something we talk a lot about is how different every company is. And, if you look at a lot of other industries, the variance in the way that they're run isn't usually as great. And I think it's kind of a cool thing to see, because these are really unique companies. People really put a lot of their own selves into their business, which I think makes them a very unique type of operation. And it really kind of depends on how they want to run it. Some people really feel strongly about the team model. Some people really want to cater, very highly to their clients. Some want to just run on what you would consider like a templated model, where there's always a set time. And it changes the bottlenecks because of the way that they operate. And, there are some common threads. So if you look at the, customer journey of someone who's using a pet service for, whether it's sitting, they have a cat, or walking or training, there typically is like a set customer journey for it. And then when you look at a customer journey, I would say that the bottlenecks really kind of start because of the overwhelming amount of communication that's needed in many cases. Just from booking an appointment, understanding the pet that they're going to take care of, making sure that they have everything, down that the customer, the pet parent needs. And it's just a lot of communication, and then the follow up as well. And it takes hiring the right person too. A lot of folks that work in this industry, we're learning, they have a really specialized set of needs as to why they want to do this job. And we were talking to a company yesterday that I had never heard this before, but they apparently had some folks on their staff that had been there for 20 years. And so their biggest focus really was in how do we build the right environment to have our staff members be successful. But I've also, been really interested in just the operations of these companies, because everyone does it slightly differently. Joe's actually going to one today that is quite interesting. That's based in Chicago where he lives. That I would say is a little bit more untraditional compared to the 90% majority of folks that we work with. And so, when you have that much variability, it's more about finding a bottleneck for that company specifically. But I do think communication, the whole operational layer of handling the administration of the scheduling, the routing, the hiring, the training, the billing even, all have bottlenecks in them.
Well, and I think that's just so important from like the business owner's perspective of that my bottlenecks may only be very specific to me, and that the solutions, my needs are my own and not this, industry level wide break or something that just is broken and can't be fixed at that. And so that's encouraging. It should be encouraging to us to go, okay, I have a model for my own reasons. And I love that you pointed that out, Ian, of these, this is how I need to run my business or how I want to run my business. There are constraints and bottlenecks that come along with that I kind of have to accept with it. Now, how do I loosen those or make those as easy as possible? And what solutions do I have to overcome those?
It's interesting, right? Because we run a software business, for lack of a better way to put it. We're a consulting agency software company, yeah. And there's a playbook on how to run these businesses where there's 52 million small to mid-sized businesses, I believe, in the United States. So if you start one of these things, you're guaranteed to find someone who needs your services. So you essentially can take the playbook and run it, right? And I don't really feel like there's quite the same playbook in the pet service space. It's seems like a lot of folks start almost as solopreneurs and grow and build into what it becomes. And I really admire like what Michelle's doing with Dogco, where she's trying to help build some standardization. I think that's a really cool attempt to help put some real paver stones, if you will, into the industry.
Have you heard of Time to Pet? Chrisanne from Rating Cats and Dogs has this to say.
Becoming a Time to Pet client has been a game changer for us. We can give our pet services clients real-time, cloud-based information they never imagined they'd be interested in. And most importantly, to me personally, I can better manage my company and look forward to more. And not a small thing, Time to Pet is responsive to my requests for new features and modifications to existing ones.
If you're looking for new pet sitting software, give Time to Pet a try. Listeners of our show will save 50% off your first 3 months by visiting timetopet.com/confessional. Yeah, we talk about being accidental business owners, where you start taking care of your neighbor's pets, and then you wake up 10 years later, and you're like, what do I do? Like, it's very real. Like, that story is throughout the entire industry. And as we talk about those small businesses that you mentioned, Ian, I know that you guys, like you mentioned that, AI is a portion of what you do, and then you have these algorithms and these models that you're putting together for how to handle these constraints. But as like AI is big. So I did want to ask you, especially from your perspective and the level that you all are working at, how should we be thinking about adopting AI, right? And how should we be thinking about applying that in our own businesses?
So it's interesting for me because I've been working with AI for, I can't believe this, 14 years, which, it seems like it's just become a really big thing in the past, like 3-4 years. I blame ChatGPT for that. And it's interesting because the way that AI has functioned hasn't changed all that much since it's, what it originally started to appear in the software systemization world. It's got a lot faster, and there's a lot more utility now with it, which is great. But AI works really well when you have a standard process that's repeatable. That's really the best use case. So when you sit there and think, what are things that I do over and over and over again? Well, maybe there's an opportunity for AI to actually be of value. But you can get into more complex things with agents where you can actually assign workflows. The problem is the variance that AI can have. So, if it's doing something that's pretty standard, it's usually okay. It's once you start adding complexity, it starts to get more difficult. So, in developing software, and Joe can speak to this a lot better than I can because he's, a developer. But you do a lot of testing. Once you've been at it doing development work for a long time, you get very proficient at the coding. It's almost like, oh, I know what to do and what to write, the script. But then the true value of actually developing a good platform is in the continuous testing and development of the outcome you're looking to achieve. And that is where I think it's difficult with AI, because you're going to need some time to see how does this work. And then so that translates to business owners where, if you're experimenting with it, don't expect it just to be potentially a quick fix. If you're paying someone to do it, make sure that they have some understanding and knowledge about your challenge, or else you're going to pay a lot of money. And if you're developing something completely custom, it is just going to take time, and there's going to be expense associated with it. So it's a valuable tool that's out there for sure. But I wanted to kind of hand it over to Joe to, give his thoughts.
Yeah, the thing I always tell people about, working with us is our goal is to understand your business, as deeply as we can, right? Like we need to be understanding the job and the process as well as the person that does it every day in order to create effective solutions, right? So, if you're the person doing that process and you're experimenting with AI, then like I would say, yeah, try to start with just creating a training manual for yourself by hand, and then feed that into an AI system, right? AI is very good at it's essentially elaborate pattern recognition. That is what it is. It is very elaborate, very fancy pattern recognition. That is all it is. It's learned how to speak and talk and interact with humans the same way as a human would, by imitating humans. It's all patterns. It's just very large. So I think that's a very good thing to keep in mind when working with AI is it will excel at pattern recognition, but you have to provide it the right context, the right guidelines, and you have to teach it to do something to a sufficient level as with the same understanding as the person that's doing it. Otherwise, the variance just gets far too out of hand. And that's really why for us, we don't heavily leverage AI in our routing and scheduling solutions. We build actual systems and models, because those won't make the executive decision that this appointment doesn't matter, or and you end up committing the cardinal sin of accidentally missing a visit or something like that. So yeah, just I think that's a really good mental model to keep with AI usage.
And how you're not applying it to the scheduling, that because as you mentioned earlier, like it's almost a deterministic kind of outcome that you need of there's only one and maybe two ways that I need this to work and go together. And as Ian had mentioned, the level of variance and the variance that can come from using AI if you're not careful on how it's trained, that's too big of a risk. And so Pixelum is applying the AI as the agent. Is that right? And the kind of that first step. So what's that role in your software?
So the one thing it is really useful at is comparing and analyzing the discrepancies between various businesses. As Ian mentioned, we've seen all sorts of different operating models. Some are very general, some are very specific. So some businesses, it really is like 90% set in stone, and the automation only helps with the mapping, the visualization, capacity planning, etc. So comparing, like what we've done today to what your needs might be is really where AI is most useful to us. How do we need to adjust our models and our algorithms? And how does this pertain to other problems? We get asked, we're being asked to solve problems outside of scheduling and routing now in the pet service industry. But that really is the core of just the administrative side of a pet service business, right? Sure, you have your standard functions such as invoicing, client communications, all that, but putting together the schedule and making sure that you have the providers providing the right service to the right person, that's the core of it. So that's where AI has been really interesting and helpful for us, just getting a high level overview and seeing what are the commonalities, what are the patterns. AI is really good at pattern recognition. What are the patterns that this business has, and how are they similar to the patterns and the workflows of another business?
Now, this industry is also very well known for being extremely hands-on, being very, very relational. So from your perspective, and as you're building, I mean, you're actively building a software and you're approaching these problems from an automated technological perspective. How do these two things mesh, of this kind of hands-on, heavy trust, emotion, and then the technology side as we bring it into our business?
I think that's why I like that we started with the scheduling and routing problem, because most people that get into a pet service business, they do it because they want to be hands-on with the animals. They want to be providing the best customer service. And that really is where humans are far better at, providing those things, right? They didn't get into this industry, most of them. I don't know, maybe there's a few of you out there that just really like putting together complicated schedules and figuring out what's the best way to run a group walk. For the most part, no, that's where a computer system can really come into play, right? I mentioned the warehouse analogy earlier. Nowadays, advanced warehouses, they have a laser scanner that is constantly scanning the warehouse and telling you exactly where the box you have should go, and measures all your constraints, such as, does this need to be refrigerated? How quickly is it going to need to go out the door, etc. That's really what we're building for the pet service industry, something that it will follow all your rules. It'll make sure that, your schedule is done, it's perfect, you're not going to miss a visit. You have, we have conflict resolution too, where we're calling out saying like, hey, look, you have 13 appointments, and they, based on traffic data and all these other things, you're not going to be able to hit this one. You should assign this to somebody else, and all those things. So, sorry for the little tangent there. Back to the original question. Yeah, I think that's, I think we're solving the piece that people aren't as good at, right? Because, it's easy for a computer to look at all these systems, and especially with the current software in the industry right now, in order to do what we're doing, you have to be, going through a bunch of notes and tags and, referencing the client file and all that. If you just have high level bird's eye, awareness of what's going on, and that's programmed, that gives you more time to spend meeting with clients, taking care of pets, and doing the things that'll grow your business and your business's reputation.
A big part of that too, Joe, is I know that pet industry, the pet industry, talk about complexity in businesses, like we're facing this weird bottleneck as an industry as a whole of like our pricing power as a business and our profits and our ability to pay with rising costs and all this stuff versus how much people in our markets are going to want to pay for our services. Like this, it seems like there's this weird cap that we're approaching and we're getting constrained. And so when we talk about, hey, I need more money in my business, I need to raise my prices, that's getting harder and harder to do. So then we have to look elsewhere of going, where am I being inefficient? And I, as a business, need to start asking myself efficiencies in that, whether that's the time it takes to put in the route or just the route itself and how all these things come together to start being able to run a more financially stable business.
Yeah, it's actually a really good point that you're bringing up in story, because like I spent a lot of my time in the Fortune 500 world trying to figure out how to reduce operational costs by maximizing efficiency, looking at teams, processes, and looking really for where are their patterns, right, and what's happening, and how do we develop the right tech to reduce that? Because even at the large scale, like enterprise companies, I mean, most of the revenue that they make will get eaten up by things that impact their margins. And in competitive markets, you don't have a lot of opportunity to change pricing all that much. So how do you stay competitive and then also at the same time become more revenue efficient, if you will? And it's a big challenge. And I think, one of the things that we're really, captivated by is, the fact that folks work so hard to get these companies to these size that we're seeing. They have a bunch of loyal customers and people that really appreciate what they do. But there's just so much in the way of like building to a larger scale, and also just becoming what I would say you could call sustainable. Where it's not a burden to continue to run the business. And so I think that's what we're fascinated by, is trying to figure out how can we help folks there. For me, it's like the puzzle I love putting together. So I got into that on the corporate side of the fence. I just want to champion people who work really hard. I give them their time back and help them, grow and succeed their businesses. And technology is a great way to do that. But it has to be the right technology. It has to be, and we're seeing a huge shift right now in the market. It's 2026, which is weird to think about. The world of software as a service solutions, exponentially grew from, I would call it 2014 until about 2024. So I had a good 10-year run where there was a boom in the market. And a lot of folks are starting to realize, sometimes investing in these tools doesn't actually help me get as far as I like to get. And that's happening in a lot of other industries, right? And more people are turning to thinking, well, how, especially with AI, this is one of the cool things that AI is giving power back to the people with, is like, can I build my own solution? Can I find ways to actually utilize the technology to help me just become more efficient and effective with my business without, needing to try to configure a system that may or may not actually help me? It's a very interesting time and place right now.
I got to listen to a speaker a couple days ago who worked with one of the second or third largest grocer in the United States, and he was talking about how, a grocer's margins are 1 to 3%, and he was like, like 1 to, and so when he was talking about it, he's like, do you think we counted the steps from one aisle to the next when shelving? Do you think we measured how long lights were on in the back versus the front? Do you think we paid? It was just a completely different way that I had never thought about the business of like, oh, it's just about relations and fun, and you need to just make sure that everybody loves and trusts you. And he comes in, he's like, basically, they had stats on people leaving lights on overnight, and the cost that did to their bottom line, and that level of, and I'm not saying like everybody needs to be thinking about that, but I think it is important to recognize that as we are an industry that is where most of our money goes to labor, we are so labor heavy in everything that we do. If we are not paying attention to these little things, it gets out of hand way too fast. And then all of a sudden our businesses can't do the things that we want to do. We can't reinvest. We get stuck and we get locked in. And then our business just kind of stagnates or dies. And it's trying to be proactive in this and finding those efficiencies that are really important.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people start businesses. I'm just going to speak generally, because they want to own something and they want to have some sort of level of freedom, right, at some point. And it's challenging, right, if you can't find that freedom, that where you're an integral part to it. And one of I do a little coaching here and there where I help folks that are entrepreneurs, and one of the biggest things I say to them is figure out what are your turnkey systems. What can you remove yourself from the business. And my business coach wrote a great book called Buy Back Your Time. And that's like his whole foundation is, finding ways to buy back your time as the owner of the business or the founder of the business. Because really, like, you should be doing the things that you love to do because you created this entity. It's an interesting, concept, right? Because I think folks, they're interested in, especially we've noticed, like folks that run these companies, they love animals, they love what they're doing. Like you said, maybe they get into it because they're watching their neighbor's dogs. And the next thing they know, that they've got a staff of 10 folks that they're overseeing doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And they might be sitting there thinking, when do I get a little bit of a break, or is there an exit strategy for me? I built this thing, and those are, I think, are good questions to ask, and we like to postulate around that.
Yeah, I think like we've seen so many times in this, this industry in particular, the owner is often the, if not the only, the primary holder, organizer of schedules. They also frequently are the first person to jump in when a visit, provider can't make their visit, something comes up. And when we're comparing that to like the grocery industry, I think most people in this industry have a hard time even finding the time to start thinking about these problems, right? If your day looks like, hey, I'm gonna make all the schedules, and oh, somebody called out, and let me remake all the schedules, and then I've got to go take these 3 appointments. Yeah, you're not really, like, you're so in the weeds that it's got to be really hard to even analyze things like, oh, okay, how much am I making on this service? Like, am I charging enough to cover my costs? What if I were to make a better route that, involves less travel time and I can fit an extra appointment in? What does that do for my business? Right? These are the problems that we want to help people start to review and take a look at, because, like, it's chaos out there. We know that.
So I know we're talking about like solving problems, and one of the things that this is, though, is it is adding something new to my plate in my business. It's this adding of another tool, adding this other system now. What are challenges that maybe you see your clients face when now adding something new to the business?
I mean, I've always had this mindset of really good software solutions take away versus add. I started my career in more of the user experience world, and behavioral science aspect of software. Looking at how people use things, and I think that principle kind of applies here with what we're trying to do for folks. Is we don't really want to create another thing that they have to use and learn how to use, and bog themselves down with additional time. Which is why we take the approach we take, where we actually spend a good amount of time going through phases of implementation where we're learning about all the aspects of the business, applying their business rules, setting up and configuring it so that when it does launch for them, it's just something that's completely taken off their plate. So there's some time investment up front, but in the long run, year over year, they are essentially free of having to handle this complex task over and over. So it's interesting because, like, a lot of systems out there are like meant to be used by humans like very directly. Like I used to live in a product called Jira back in my corporate times, where we managed all of our work that we were doing on different projects. And I was in that thing, 5 hours a day, and I was doing all these little manual things. And then one day, one company I worked for, I said, can I just like automate some of this stuff that I do? Because I, don't really need to be spending this much time. And started trying to think of ways I could like have the system, work around me. And that was kind of the old theory of software was, let's build something that enables folks, but they still have to utilize. And now with a lot of the way the technology is going, we're actually able to build technology that removes the person from needing to be hands-on with it as much as older systems.
Yeah, our goal is for people to not have to think about using anything we build, and also for their customers and their staff to not notice a difference. Of course, if we identify like things that should be changed, we'll recommend them, but that's really how CallioPro is set up. You go in, you take a look at the schedule you put together, you press a button, goes back into Time to Pet or whatever you're using, and you have to think about less, and you don't have to spend more than 10 minutes just confirming and making sure everything looks good. This is not a platform we want people to live in.
And now, a word from our friends at Pet Sitters International.
Are you safe? Whether you're a pet sitter, dog walker, or both, the safety of the pets you care for, as well as the safety of yourself and your team, is your responsibility. This requires perspective, prevention, and protocols. Join PSI for our next Focus One Day Online Summit on May 6th as we take a deep dive into this important topic for our industry. Visit petsit.com/PSC for more information and a special coupon code.
I know for us, like there's that worry of that tool fatigue of how many things are on my plate. No, Ian, you spoke to that of like, okay, this is something that I'm in charge of managing. Like I own the status. I have to look at this. And Joe, like I've got more buttons to click. And we think about that with our team of how many apps do they have to download? How many things do they have to be in? How many things do they have to be looking at? How many, not just steps in the process, but kind of tool switching from one thing to the next does this take? Because every one of those switching steps takes burden, takes mental fatigue, takes now, okay, wait, where's the, like, I just think of things like, where's the UI, right? Okay, I'm in a new app. Where's everything laid out? How is like that switching cost that's in real time that impacts me and my ability to do work?
Yeah, I worked in the BPO world, business process optimization, where we would look at teams, right? And we'd say, okay, these people are having to jump between these like 3 or 4 or 5, sometimes 6 tools in a day.
Right.
And we would actually study the mental fatigue of folks having to do that. And the goal of the work we were doing was to figure out how do we reduce that? How do we take them out of utilizing so many systems? And that's just one of our philosophies here is like, how do we remove, like when we go into a company, one of our clients, it's not a pet care space. They actually work in, they do medical device repair. And they were using paper. They were using Google Calendar. They were using Google Maps. They were all over the place with all these tools that they were using, QuickBooks. And we're like, hey, I think most of your day is getting bogged down by just the fact that you're jumping all over the place to do your job. What happens if we made one operational platform for you, where you just look at that and that's where you go? And you also can specify to us what is the user interface that you need as well. And we spent, I guess it was about 3 months articulating the design of the system with them. And once we launched and got this thing running, it's all their design really that we just helped facilitate. And it's tremendously just cut down that, fatigue that you get from jumping from system to system. And I think that's the way more things are going to go, especially in the smaller mid markets. It was something that I think was reserved for, large billion-dollar companies for a long time. But now, because technology is getting cheaper and more accessible, it's actually coming down into these other markets.
Yeah, I just need a big red button in the lower right-hand corner that just says "Scream into the void." It doesn't do anything. You just hit it and it makes you feel a little bit better some days. Oh, Austin, were you gonna? Sorry, you jumped on there. I'm sorry. I know the. Oh, it just make me feel better.
You should put a
I was
big
just
red
saying, I
button in
need the same
Calliope that says
sometime.
everybody calls out, make my schedule.
Right. That's the big button. I mean, all of this though is, I think that there's this short-term thinking that it can be as a business owner of, I need my problem solved now, pain now, issues now, lack of sleep now. There's also though this long-term view in business that I really believe in the last 5 years, a lot of people in the pet care space have opened up to the possibility of this transference of my business, whether that it's sold or it's taken up or I pass it over to somebody. Like, how do you see technology and automation helping business owners make this exit, make this transference of their business?
Yeah, I mean, there's a great book called The E-Myth that I just want to recommend any of your listeners to go read. But the whole concept in that book is building scalable, repeatable systems, the turnkey concept, like think McDonald's. How do I have things where if I put a person in this place, can I teach them how to do something rather simply and quickly? And do I have the right, let's call it systems, tools, whatever you want to use here, as something that they can be enabled by. So it's really kind of looking at your business from like almost a bird's eye view and thinking, okay, where are there the hard decisions that really require someone with specialized knowledge and understanding to do versus where are things that are repeatable that we could scale. Because I think exiting a company is like the ultimate dream, right? Like you build them, you want to sell it, you want to retire hopefully someday, and it's hard to do that when you're caught up in the mix of everything, or you have key people, and being a key person of influence in your business is important, right? But extracting yourself from the relevance of actually running it is how you get there. So, I mean, that's where technology becomes a great use case, right? And figuring out what are the right systems for my business to operate without me. And taking a good look at that. And like I said, it's interesting in this space because everyone is very different, and how they operate. So it almost becomes a unique thing. And, I had spent some time just doing some consulting as well, where I go look at companies and they'd say, okay, well, because I had the experience of doing the BPO work, and helping companies think, okay, where can we reduce churn? Where can we automate? Where can we standardize? And most of the reason for it was because the business owners, wanted to get out one day, and they wanted a system where they said, okay, person who is interested in buying my company, here's this thing. You just need these key people in these seats, and you're good to go. Joe, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that.
I mean, I think you really touched on the big point of continuity for a business, right? Which is, do we have the systems in place? Are they, and how transferable are they? Like if somebody were to step in and take over Funky Bunch, for example, would, like what would they need to know? What decisions would they need to be making on a daily basis? And the less decisions you're actually making, I think that's a very good measure of just how systematized and organized you are. Because that's really what, whether you want to pass the business on to a friend, a child, or sell it, that's what they're going to be looking at as well, is what would it take for me to jump into the seat and, become the owner of this business? And how much work would that take and how much would I have to learn? The more turnkey that is, the easier that's going to become and the more attractive it's going to be.
there's the mindset that we have of, okay, well, I need to not be doing the visits. Okay, great. I'm quote unquote out of my business. But then we sit in the admin backstage, all of the behind the scenes work, the operations management. That's a whole other level that we then go, oh, what would it really mean for me if I didn't touch any of that? Right. And we keep moving up and up a little bit. And I came across this quote, a little while ago. Of, you mentioned the continuity, the consistency. It was compassion without consistency isn't care, it's negligence dressed as kindness. And when I thought about this at the micro level of how we hold the leash, how we scoop the litter, and then the macro level of how operationally the visits are scheduled, how the notes are put in, how communication is handled, how my business projects itself, it really became this massive like problem set of how do we make sure we're consistent across the board, regardless of whether I'm happy, whether I got enough sleep, whether the team members are doing well. Like, how do we make sure we ensure all of that so that if I'm not here, if something happens, if we need to sell or pass on to somebody, like that goes on. Because if we really care about serving people and our clients well, we need to care about that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's funny because I think about it all the time with our company. Like, I think, like, how can this run without me? And I kind of encourage a lot of folks around the business to kind of think, how can this work without me here? And not that you want to obviously remove yourself. I'm having a good time. This is fun. I love what we do. I like working with everyone. So I don't really want to remove myself from the business. But objectively, what I'm always trying to figure out is like, how can I just make it run better? Where am I potentially going to cause friction? And can I remove that friction? And I think each one of us, at Pixelum is pretty dedicated to solving all the problems and challenges for our clients. And we do also try to think, well, how do we also make a better environment for our business, a better place to work? And a lot of that really comes down to not necessarily having to be a constraint against it.
I was also just going to piggyback off what you all said. Like, I think just recognizing that it is possible to systematize complex processes is like really important for business owners to remember and to like recognize in any industry. But like we speak with a lot of business owners that are like all these complex decisions, rules, constraints for different clients, like all of that unfortunately lives in my head. So that's why, and until I train somebody else on that, I'm not going to be able to sell the business or transfer it. But like all of those, there are ways of, systematizing or standardizing, like even the most complex processes. And that's also where our process of meeting with the clients, many different times and the different sessions, really help with that.
Yeah, we always like to tell people that, like going through the onboarding and setup process for Calio Pro with us, it's similar to hiring a new admin who's going to do scheduling for you. Except for this one, they're always going to follow your rules. They're not going to tell you like, hey, you're wrong, and you only have to train them once, unless you want to change something. Then you just tell us what the change is, or enter that in yourself, and the system runs as planned.
I think that's a really good point. Of a lot of times we can think of, well, I'm the secret sauce and I can't be replaced and it's too hard to solve. So I really appreciate that of that mindset of this is handoffable, right? I can push this to something else. This doesn't have to be me anymore. And what we then have to do on our end, like that may take a little bit of, I know sometimes people put their identity in their skills and their tasks, and they think, well, I'm important and needed in my business because I'm the only one who can do X, Y, Z. So on the back end, we also then have to grapple with, oh, I'm not needed for that anymore. What's my purpose and what am I supposed to do in my business now?
I always say, do the thing that you're best at.
Yeah.
What are you really good at doing, right? And that's your place in the business. It's interesting. Succession planning, is a term that comes up in the corporate environment a lot. And when I got my first like big role, I thought it was really wild that my boss at the time said, "Well, plan how you are no longer needed." And that really stuck with me for a long time. It's been about 12 years now that I heard that statement, and that's kind of, and I asked them why, and they said, "Well, I want you, if you're going to continue to work in this company, doing the thing that you're really good at doing."
It's the one instance where planned obsolescence is actually okay, right? We want to make us not relevant or needed there. But I know that there's a lot going on. There's a lot moving on in this space. What are you all excited about, or trends that you're seeing that you think small business owners need to be aware of and paying attention to?
Definitely we touched on it earlier, which is AI. I encourage everyone to experiment with it, in the context of their business and where they think it could help. There's a ton of information out there on YouTube. There's, blogs, articles, all kinds of stuff, right? Podcasts, to learn about how to utilize AI. And, folks can feel free to come chat us up as well if they want to talk about it. But just trying to figure out, what is out there that's available constantly is a very valuable exercise. Because I think the trend that we're going to see more of is actually pet service companies getting larger and larger. It's definitely a growing industry since post-COVID, right? The number of folks owning pets has skyrocketed. The number of businesses, that are in this space is growing. We've been really surprised at some of the scale of some of the folks that we've talked with. And most of the times they are struggling through the operational challenges, but with lots and lots of people trying to solve the same problems and talking to each other, and folks like us out there that are trying to help on the technology side, there's going to be more and more breakthroughs where we're going to see larger and larger scale companies, which is really exciting to me. This is a highly valuable service that everyone in the space provides. I have 5 cats myself, and I don't just trust them to anyone. So, knowing that there's good, reputable companies out there, actually, someone should go to my area and start a pet service company. We need one desperately. It is a nice feeling, right? You want a company you can trust. And in highly dense, metro areas or urban areas, people need this. So there's a ton of potential. And I think looking at other business practices, maybe looking at other similar verticals in the field service space are a good idea for folks to do. Because I think there's a lot going on in those spaces that are attributable to helping companies in this space. But I think the one trend that we're just kind of constantly seeing, probably day in and day out, is people wanting to reduce their operational overhead, make it easier to manage, and also the struggle of people and hiring. So people management and hiring, is another big trend we're seeing, where people are coming up with some unique solutions on their own, and also seeking ways to find support.
Yeah, I think the other thing that, just like technology and AI have really enabled is for companies like ours to provide services to, like companies in the pet service industry, they're typically smaller, right? I think some of the larger players are $2-3 million a year, and that's nowhere near the scale that you used to have to hit in order to have a custom tailored system, right? But through AI and just general technology advancements that make things cheaper and more affordable, and we've been very thoughtful about how we've put together all of our solutions as well, and that makes it affordable and accessible to to have a system that's tailored to you. You're no longer forced to buy something off the shelf and, because that's the only thing that you can afford. Like custom solutions, you used to be in the 50, 60, $70,000 range just to start out. And we can do our work for a fraction of the price. So I think that's something that, people should really explore. How has AI and technology changed so that you can build a system that's tailored to you and compete with some of the larger players.
I want to thank you all for coming on the show today, Austin, Ian, and Joe. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've really appreciated the thoughtfulness around this conversation of not just solution, but intentionality behind it and the reasons that we can make our business run and be better. This is a really big topic, though, and there may be a lot of questions generated from this and, bouncing ideas off and possibilities. So if listeners are interested in getting in touch, looking into this work, how best can people get in touch with you and follow along?
Yes, Collin. Yeah, thank you so much for having us again. Yeah, it's been awesome, and for your insights as well. Just reach out to me, Austin at pixelum.io. Austin spelled AUSTIN, like the capital of Texas, and then and P is in pet, IXELUM as in Mary.io. Yep. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. We're excited for, where things are going.
Yeah. Absolutely. This has been a lot of fun. Again, thank you all for coming on the show today.
No, thank you, Collin.
That was fun.
Yeah, thank you.
My biggest takeaway from my conversation with the team at Pixelum is the importance of software in our business. And that good software, as Ian said, good software solutions take away versus add. They take away friction. They take away headaches. They take away frustrations. What they should add is time back to our day and seamless integration and experience for our clients. However, nothing will replace the touch of a person in our business. As we interact with our clients, they are looking more than ever for a human on the other end. AI is the buzzword and the hot topic right now, but whether it's an AI agent or an automatic reply to a message on Facebook or Instagram, your clients are looking to connect with a person. And that is going to be a major differentiating factor for the industry moving forward. Those who can take technology as a whole and leverage that so that they can spend more time doing the human things in their business. The right tool that we use, that should reduce and lower our fatigue and switching costs. And it should give us time back. If what we want to add to our business, if what we want to do, if it doesn't remove burden, it's probably not the right fit for us. And that's a distinction that we all have to understand in our business and a decision that we have to make for how we want to run it and serve our clients. We want to thank today's sponsors, Time to Pet, and our friends at Pet Sitters International for making this show possible. We also really want to thank you so much for listening.